The wind had teeth that morning. It came gnawing across the prairie, stirring up the scent of charred canvas and dried blood. Dust rolled low, curling in spirals like old smoke, and the sky hung too bright, too still, as if holding its breath for the dead. Elias Rourke tightened the reins with calloused fingers. His mule, a stubborn creature named Pearl, hesitated at the ridge, ears twitching toward the silence below. Silence like that wasn't natural, not out here. The prairie talked, even in grief. Crickets, the wind, the low huff of cattle far off. But here not a sound, not even the buzz of flies. Then he saw the wagon, or what was left of it, which splintered like bones, wheels cracked, canvas torn and blackened. Figures sprawled along the ground in stiff shapes, strewn like broken toys. Men, women, perhaps a child. He didn't count them. He never did. Elias dismounted slow, his boots whispering against the dry grass. He moved without hurry. Grief had taught him not to rush into ruin. He checked for life, because it was the thing you did, even when you were sure there wasn't any left to find. Then movement. A shape, small, curled beside the ruin like a dropped handkerchief. Pale dress streaked with soot and blood, one bare foot poking from beneath the hem. She lay still, but not stiff. There was breath, faint as a ghost sigh. He crouched beside her. Skin, like porcelain, left in the sun too long. The side of her head crusted with blood, but her chest rose, slow and sure. She was alive. "Ma'am," he said, voice rough from disuse. Her eyelids fluttered. No words came, just a flicker of awareness, the kind that recognizes pain before anything else. He could have left her. Might have been easier. But something in the way her hand curled near her heart, like she was holding tight to something the world hadn't taken yet, stopped him cold. He lifted her careful as winter glass. Back atop Pearl, she rested against him like she had nowhere else to go. She didn't. Not anymore. The ride home was quiet, save for the groan of saddle leather and the soft thump of hooves. He didn't speak. She didn't stir. Only once did she shift, a small sound escaping her throat, less than a word, more than a whimper. His cabin sat in the hollow of two low hills, tucked away from the main trail. It wasn't much, a single room with a lean-to shed and a crumbling fence around the back, but it held warmth and dry wood. It was all he had, and all he offered. He laid her in his bed, made tea with wild chamomile, boiled water for washing. When he came back, her eyes were open, clouded with pain and some far-off memory. But they watched him, quiet, steady. "You're safe," he said simply, setting the cup nearby. She blinked. No sign she understood. No sign she didn't. He didn't ask her name. That came in its own time. Outside, the dog barked once and lay back down. Jessie had dropped by earlier, left rabbit meat and a note about fence posts. Elias would thank him later. Now, he sat near the hearth and let the silence fill the room. It wasn't awkward. Silence, when it's honest, can be a kind of prayer. The woman slept. Not well. She twitched, flinched, murmured things that sounded more like rain than words. But she stayed breathing, and that was something. Morning came gray and full of dust. He cooked cornbread, left some by her side, and took his chores slow. By the second day, she sat up. By the third, she walked to the window and stood there long minutes, just staring at the hills. She hadn't spoken. Not until the fourth day. "I had a sister," she said, barely a breath. Elias turned. She was still by the window, hands clasped behind her back like a schoolteacher. Her voice had that clipped precision, like someone raised with books, not cows. "She didn't make it," she added, gaze not shifting. "I'm sorry," he said. She nodded once, as if accepting the apology on fate's behalf. She turned then, slowly, and studied him. He met her gaze without pressing. "Is this your land?" she asked. He nodded. "All of it. Enough of it." She seemed to take that in like a judge taking testimony. Her eyes, blue, sharp despite the bruises, narrowed slightly, not with suspicion, but thought. "I'm sold," she said. He nodded once. "Elias." They stood there for a breath too long. Then she sat. The days settled into rhythm. She did not ask to leave. He did not ask her to stay. That was the unspoken agreement between two people who had survived something they could not yet name. She read the only book on his shelf, a Bible with brittle pages. Not because she believed in it, she said one evening, but because the rhythm of old language calmed her. He watched her from the porch sometimes, while he carved fence posts or mended leather. The way she moved was cautious, like someone relearning the weight of her own skin. But there was steel beneath it. Not loud, not prideful, just quiet endurance. One afternoon, Jesse came riding up, all elbows and dust. "Folks heard about the wreck," he said, hopping off his pony. "Sheriff found tracks. Says it weren't no accident. Said they took what they wanted and burned the rest." Elias nodded. Jesse tilted his head toward the cabin. "She's the only one?" "The only one." "Guess that makes her lucky," the boy said. Elias didn't answer. Lucky wasn't a word he trusted. Later, he told her about the tracks, about the men who might have done it. She listened, eyes on the fire. "They'll come back," she said. He didn't ask how she knew. Some people just did. "You worried?" he asked. "No," she said. "I already died once." He didn't sleep that night. By the week's end, she was tending the small herb garden out back, weeding with ungloved hands. She never spoke of who she had been before, but the way she folded linens, the way she straightened her shoulders before entering a room, it whispered of a life more polished than this one. He didn't pry. He liked the quiet they shared, the way it held room for sorrow without asking for explanation. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sun bleed into the hills, she turned to him and said, "Thank you for not asking." He looked at her. "Some men would have needed to know who I was, what I had." "I saw enough," he said. She nodded. "Most people only see what's missing." He didn't reply. But inside something shifted. The wind came again that night, softer this time. It brought no scent of blood, only dust and the faintest trace of sage. In the dark, the woman slept without flinching. Elias sat by the window, watching the stars as they blinked into place. He didn't know what she would choose, whether she'd stay, whether she'd leave once her strength returned. But something in the way she said his name, soft as cloth, made him hope for the former. Not yet love, not even desire, just a name spoken like it mattered. And that was enough, for now. The morning broke with a hush, all silver mist and dew-slick grass, the kind of morning that carried no promises, only the weight of things unsaid. Elias stood at the fence line, boot soles damp, watching the mule nose a patch of stubborn wildflowers blooming despite the cold. Behind him, the cabin door creaked open. Isolde stepped out barefoot, hair still damp from washing. She wore a calico dress that belonged to Elias's late wife, loose at the shoulders, faded at the seams. It fit her like a borrowed memory, and for a second Elias looked away. "I swept," she said quietly. He nodded, brushing a thumb against the fence rail. "Didn't need doing. I needed something to do." That was the truth of it. She moved like a woman chased not by men, but by thoughts too loud to bear indoors. In the early days, she wandered the yard in circles. Not pacing, not restless, more like she was stitching something invisible back together. Elias let her. He didn't ask where she went in her mind. Grief had taught him that not all wandering was aimless. The days warmed slow. Isolde's cheeks grew less pale. Her eyes still held storms, but sometimes, when she laughed, rare, breathy, almost surprised, it broke through like sun between storm clouds. Those laughs weren't for Elias. Not yet. Sometimes for the dog. Once for a bird that landed too bold on the sill. She cooked when she could, burned biscuits, but brewed tea like a woman who'd poured from porcelain once upon a time. She was unaccustomed to rough work. Her hands blistered pulling water. But she never complained, never asked for softness. That Elias noticed most of all. One afternoon, she sat on the porch shelling beans, sleeves rolled up to her elbows. Elias came back from splitting wood and stood a moment, watching. "You could have been a schoolmarm," he said. "I was meant to be a baroness," she replied without looking up. The silence stretched thin. "My husband had a title," she added, "and debts. A dangerous combination." Elias didn't move. "We were traveling west to start over. He died of fever in Kansas. I carried on because, well, I didn't know how not to." Elias sat on the porch step, hands rough and blackened from bark. He didn't ask questions, just waited. There was a man on the wagon train, she continued, voice barely above the breeze. Said he knew my late husband, offered protection, said it was a cruel world for women alone. A pause. The beans clicked softly into the bowl. I didn't trust him. Should have trusted that. She didn't say what happened next. She didn't have to. Elias had seen the burn marks on her arms, the way her eyes jumped at the sound of boots too fast against floorboards. He's dead now, she said finally. I saw it in the smoke. And yet, I still dream of his hands. Elias stood quietly. He fetched her a jar of willow balm for the blisters. You don't need to tell it all at once, he said. She looked up. Then you believe me? I believe you were hurt, he said. That's enough. Something eased in her jaw, a tightness that had lived there since the first day he found her. She took the balm, not touching his fingers, but her eyes softened in thanks. The next day, she asked to help with the fence. You ever swung a hammer? He asked. I've swung worse, she said. They worked in the sun, sweat carving lines down her temples. She bent rusty nails straight with quiet resolve. He showed her how to wrap wire tight without slicing through palm or patience. Their words were few, but they moved in rhythm. That meant more. Later, she soaked her hands in cool water while he smoked his pipe on the stoop. My mother taught me French and piano, she said, staring into the basin, neither of which are particularly useful for fence mending. Elias let the smoke curl between them before answering. My wife couldn't ride a horse. Said they were too proud. Was she? More than the horse. Isolde smiled. A real one this time. It changed her face entirely, softened the aristocratic lines, made her look like a woman who could belong to this soil. You miss her, she said. I miss who I was when she looked at me, he replied. The wind picked up then, tugging at loose strands of her hair. You still carry her, she whispered. He nodded once. They didn't speak again until supper. The following week, Elias went into town for flour. Left early, rode back slow. When he returned, the garden had been weeded, and Isolde had patched the roof with old canvas and nails too long. Crooked, but holding. He chuckled. Roof's lookin' rebellious. She shrugged. Better than leaking. Inside she'd made stew. Oversalted, watery. He ate every bite. Over supper, she watched the fire, spoon idle in her bowl. What would I be here if I stayed? She asked softly. Elias didn't answer right away. The fire popped. The dog shifted beside the hearth. Whatever you chose, he said finally. She nodded. Her throat worked once. Then she asked, and what if I chose nothing yet? Then nothing is yours for now. The days grew longer. They settled into patterns without meaning to. She hung laundry on the line. He fixed the hinges she kept slamming. They argued once over how much salt to put in the pickling jar. She won. He let her. Jessie rode up again one afternoon, dusty and loud. Preacher says there's a family comin' west lookin' to hire help, he said. Could be good work for a woman. Housemaid sort. Isolde stood behind Elias in the doorway. Jessie nodded toward her. No offense, ma'am. None taken, she said coolly. Elias thanked him. Jessie tipped his hat and rode off. You want to go? Elias asked once they were alone. She shook her head. I don't want to serve anyone ever again. He nodded. Besides, she added, I've yet to tame that roof. They both laughed. Later that night, rain fell soft on the tin. Isolde sat in Elias's rocking chair, wrapped in a worn quilt. I dreamed of my sister, she said, voice low. She was chasing fireflies. We used to do that when we were girls. Before titles. Before men. Just two girls in a garden too wild for proper ladies. She blinked slow. I miss that garden. Elias poured 2 mugs of cider, handed her one. You're making a new one, he said. She looked down at her hands. Still healing, still rough. Doesn't feel like it. Roots take time. Outside, the rain deepened, steady as breath. The garden would drink well tonight. The land would remember her footprints. The fence would hold, crooked or not. And though neither said aloud, they both knew something was growing between them. Something unspoken, not yet blossomed, but real. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was the place where love might someday come to rest. The storm rolled in quiet at first, a low rumble beneath the earth, like something ancient turning over in its sleep. The wind picked up without warning, snapping the clothesline and chasing dead leaves in frantic spirals across the yard. Elias moved without hurry, gathering the chickens, latching the shutters, checking the barn doors twice. The sky hung heavy above the hills, a tarnished silver bowl ready to tip. Inside, Isolde stirred the coals. Her dress was damp at the hem from the well, her cheeks flushed with the kind of warmth earned from work, not comfort. She had stopped flinching at thunder, stopped checking the door twice before bolting it. But her eyes still found the corners of the room when the dark pressed close. Elias handed her a folded blanket and sat down near the hearth. The flames cast long shadows, softening the worn lines of his face. He looked older in the firelight, but not weary, more like a stone shaped by river water, smoothed by seasons and silence. She broke it first. "I lied," she said, voice almost lost to the crackling logs. "Or not quite. I didn't tell all of it." He didn't move, just waited. "There were more men than I said. 6, maybe 7. Only one spoke directly to me, but I saw their eyes. The way they looked when they thought no one saw." Her hands curled around the blanket's edge. "They didn't come for money. Not just that. They came to see what they could take." Elias stared into the fire a long moment. Then, gently, "And what did they take?" She exhaled, slow and brittle. "What they could." It was not the words that shook him. It was the way she said them. Not with pain. Not even with anger. With the calm of someone who had stopped trying to carry something and had simply let it settle into her bones. He leaned forward, setting a kettle over the fire. "You don't have to carry it alone," he said. She looked at him, something sharp flickering behind her composure. "You think saying it aloud puts it down?" "No," he said. "But sometimes sharing the weight shifts how it presses." She didn't reply. Not for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was like water slipping through cracks. "I used to write letters. Every Sunday. Back in England. My sister would send lavender sachets tucked into hers. She said they kept the rot from growing in dark places." Elias nodded. "Did it help?" "No," she said, laughing softly. "But it smelled nice." He poured 2 mugs of tea, handed her one. Their fingers didn't touch, but the space between them felt warmer for it. "My wife used to sing to herself when she made bread," he said after a beat. "Never to me, just to the dough. Said it helped it rise." "Did it?" "Some days." They sat in the hush, letting the storm fill the silence between thoughts. After a while, Isolde spoke again. "I hated being a baroness." Elias looked over. Too many rules. Too many eyes. Everything had a proper way. The right fork. The right laugh. Even grief had choreography. You couldn't cry unless someone higher born went first. Her mouth twisted into something not quite a smile. "When my husband died, I felt relief before sorrow. That's how I knew I could never go back." "And now?" he asked. "Now I wear a dress that smells of wood smoke. I curse at splinters. I have blisters and calluses. And no one looks at me like they own me." She sipped the tea, closed her eyes. "Do you ever think you were meant for another life?" she asked. "No," Elias said. "I think I was meant to live through this one." Something inside her softened at that. Or maybe it broke. Whichever it was, her shoulders slumped like she'd set down a load she hadn't realized she was still carrying. The storm swelled. Wind howled against the shutters, and rain pattered sharp against the roof. But inside it was warm and still, 2 shadows seated close to a fire. That night, neither of them slept. Sometime past midnight, Isolde wandered to the barn. Elias found her there an hour later, sitting in the hayloft with her arms around the old dog. "I used to be afraid of barns," she said, without turning. "Too many corners. Too many shadows. And now, I think they're just houses that forgot how to speak." He climbed up beside her. They didn't talk after that. Just sat in the scent of straw and rain, the dog nestled between them, snoring like a small engine. The next morning brought a kind of quiet that followed only after storms. Birds moved slow through the wet branches, and the sun blinked down like a child waking late. Isolde stood barefoot in the garden, inspecting the damage: snap stems, flattened beans, a tulip bent in half. Elias brought her coffee in a tin mug. She took it without speaking. "I'll help you replant," he said. She looked over her shoulder. Her hair was unbraided, curls damp from fog. "I know." They worked side by side that afternoon, knees in the mud. She hummed a tune under her breath, nothing sweet or composed, just a low sound to fill the spaces where silence might settle too deep. Later, while he mended the coop, she walked to the ridge above the house and stood there a long while, staring out where the horizon melted into haze. When she returned, her face had changed. Not by much, just the slightest lifting of the brow, a less guarded tilt of the chin. "Someone came up the trail," she said. Elias stood. "Who?" "I don't know. Just watched." Then turned back. He moved to the door, scanning the trees, the slope beyond. Nothing. Isolde joined him, arms crossed against the chill. "Could have been nothing," she said. "But your gut says different." She nodded. He rested his hand on the post beside her. "You're not alone now." "I know," she whispered. That night, she didn't sleep in the bed. She brought her blanket to the hearth, curled on the rug near the embers. Elias watched her from his chair. He didn't ask why. He just laid his own blanket over her before dousing the lamp. She was asleep before he turned away. In the dark, the house didn't feel so empty. Not broken, not whole, but mending. And somewhere in the silence, something new began to bloom, not between their bodies, not yet, but in the thin place between grief and grace. A knowing, a trust, a beginning without fanfare. It wasn't love, still not yet, but it was where love begins, quiet as rain in soil. The sound came just past dusk, hooves, slow and deliberate, beating a hollow rhythm against the ground. Not like Jesse's erratic gallop or the lazy saunter of a passing traveler. These were different, purposeful, measured, each beat closer than the last. Elias heard them before Isolde did. He was on the porch, sharpening a blade he hadn't used in years, the kind of tool that had once served to cut wood, rope, and, on a hard winter's night, more than either. The dog raised its head and growled low, not at the sound, but at the scent that rode in on the air. Smoke, sweat, metal. Inside, Isolde moved like a shadow, hands steady as she reached for the iron kettle, pretending it was just another evening. But her shoulders told the truth. They curled inward, braced. She didn't ask. She knew. Elias rose and took a step toward her. "You said they come." She nodded once. "I hoped I was wrong." He didn't ask where she wanted to hide. She didn't offer to run. That was behind her now, the flight, the trembling. Tonight, she stood tall in a dress still damp from washing, her hair braided back with the same hands that had stitched wounds and planted tulips. Elias handed her the rifle. "Do you remember how?" She looked at the weapon, then at him. "No," she said, "but I'll learn fast." He nodded. No words wasted on promises he couldn't keep. The dog growled again, deeper this time. The first man appeared at the edge of the trees, the setting sun making a devil's halo behind his hat. He was followed by two more, none of them familiar to Elias, but Isolde's sharp breath told him enough. One of them had worn a red scarf around his wrist once. He wore it still, a totem, or maybe a trophy. They stopped at the fence, said nothing, just looked. Elias stepped forward, slow. "This land's taken." The man in the middle spat into the dirt. "We're not here for the land. You'll get nothing else." The man smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. "She owes us." Isolde stepped outside then, the rifle at her side, but not raised. She moved with the quiet grace of someone long finished with begging. "I don't owe you a thing," she said, "least of all fear." The man's smile vanished. "You've got a pretty mouth for a corpse." Elias didn't move, didn't speak. He waited. The second man reached for something at his belt, too fast, too loud. The gunshot rang out before Elias had taken a step. Not his. Isolde stood still, the rifle's barrel warm in her hand, smoke curling from the muzzle like breath in cold air. The man dropped where he stood, A surprised grunt cut off mid-sound. The others didn't run. That was the dangerous kind. The ones who didn't blink when blood spilled. The red-scarred man snarled, pulled his own pistol, and ducked behind the broken fence post. Elias moved then, not with speed, but with certainty. He ducked low, rolled behind the water trough, and fired. Wood splintered. A shout. Another shot cracked the silence, missed by inches. The dog lunged, teeth bared, catching the third man's leg before the man could fire. A scream. A struggle. Elias was there before the scream finished, blade in hand, and the fight was over as fast as it began. Only one man left. The one with the red scarf. He stood now, halfway between fear and fury, gun shaking in his hand, aimed square at Isolde. "You think this ends with me?" he shouted. "You think you'll sleep safe?" Isolde didn't speak. She didn't flinch. Elias stepped behind the man, slow, deliberate. "She already does." The man turned too late. The fight was brief, messy. No art to it. Just fists and bone, and the dull thud of men who know what it is to survive. When it ended, Elias stood, chest heaving, knuckles bleeding. The man groaned at his feet. Isolde picked up the man's gun, checked the chamber. She didn't point it, just held it. Her eyes never left him. "We let the sheriff take care of him," Elias said. "Let the law bury what's left." She nodded. By the time Jesse arrived with the sheriff, drawn by the echo of gunfire and instinct, the bodies were covered, and the red-scarred man was tied to the post he'd once leaned on like a king. The sheriff didn't ask many questions. He saw what he needed to see. As they led the man away, Isolde stood by the porch, arms crossed, lips pressed tight. The lawman looked back once. "You're welcome in this town," he said. "Both of you. If you ever need." Elias nodded. Didn't say a word. When they were gone, silence returned. Not the strained quiet of threat, but the soft, sacred hush that follows release. The kind of silence that lives inside churches and cradle songs. Isolde sat on the steps, the rifle across her knees. Her fingers traced the wood. Not shaking. "Not now. I thought I'd feel something," she said. "After. Relief, maybe. Justice. But it's just over," Elias finished. She looked up at him. "Is it?" He sat beside her, letting their shoulders touch. "Not accident. Not chance." "You ever burned a stump?" he asked. She shook her head. "Burn it fast, roots stay. Grow back. You want it gone, you hollow it out. Then burn from the inside. Slow. Quiet." She closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of ash and earth. "Feels like I've been burning from the inside for years." He nodded. "But now it's hollow." She smiled faintly. "And maybe there's room now." They didn't say what for. The stars came out slow, one by one, like stories whispered by old voices across time. The wind shifted, carrying with it the scent of rain, wood smoke, and lavender, faint, but there. Inside the house, the fire waited. So did sleep. So did morning. But for now, they sat in the quiet hollow between pain and peace. And the flame between them, small, steady, undeniable, lit the dark not with fire or fury, but something older, something beginning.